Fantastic lineup of speakers from plenaries, short talks, and also breakout rooms. So please do join us throughout the next few days. Just a brief bit of housekeeping before we continue. Please do feel free to join the Discord group. We'll post the link to this in the chat where we have adverts for jobs, discussion topics with the speakers. So please use this to continue the discussion. Any technical problems, also please email us or use Discord. Just to remind you that we are streaming directly to YouTube, and also we're recording these, and as much as possible, unless there's a request from the speaker, we will record the talks, and these will be posted online as soon as afterwards. So if there's anything you've missed from this morning or other sessions, please feel free to catch up on that. And we also have all of the previous years online there as well. So that's a fantastic resource for anybody as well, for students those new to the area, some fantastic talks there. Also, everyone has the right to unmute their right microphone, so please do switch it off so we have nice clean communication. But we would really encourage you when we have the speakers and we have discussion to ask questions, either by posting them on the chat, or if you want to raise your hand on also the chat and also then turn on your video, you're also welcome to ask your question in that way. So before we get started with this afternoon session, I'm just going to give a brief recap of this morning for any of you that missed the session. So this morning we had the first plenary with Professor Tako Somiya, and also a series of morning talks hosted by Cecilia Lashki. And we started with a talk from Tako all about electronic skins for robotics and wearables. And he introduced some of the really new and exciting developments in this world in terms of the developments of e-textiles and the new opportunities this opens up in terms of sport and rehabilitation, and also this connection to the meta world through VR and sensing and haptic devices. He talked about the need of matching durability and mechanical impedance to the human body for robustness and resilient solutions. He also talked about some of their recent work, commenting a lot on that of also John Rogers, who we have a previous recording from in previous years on the Embodied Intelligence website, about ultrafilm electronics and how we can even use these to go beyond external sensing, but actually monitoring inside the body in an external way, be it fingerprints or veins. So kind of giving new insights into what these external sensors can do, but also some of the challenges in having these ultrafilm skin wearable sensors in terms of the need for compatibility, and identifying how we can test this and how we can develop technologies which can perform this. And then he finished actually with a really interesting discussion on interleaving bodies, how we can adhere and connect some of his electronic skins to insect bodies, and also extend from sensing also to stimulation, and also include energy harvesting and photovoltaic approaches within this. And I think he really nicely summarized his goal as the development of novel electronics that harmonize with humans. And I think that really ties into this embodied intelligence kind of vision of how we can bring artificial and human-like technologies together. And in the discussion, we had this topics of sensing and learning, biodegradability, and also sensing with the body. So some really kind of fundamental developments in technologies that can drive embodied intelligence forwards. So then we had our first short talk and panel discussion led by Cecilia Lashki. And this was really nice that we had this diversity in different topics with those on the computational side, the material science, and the soft robotics side. And Cecilia started with this discussion of we need to bring the brain and body gap together, how we can do this, and kind of her vision for universal models. And also the octopus, for example, is one really nice model of embodying this brain-body gap as a means of studying and understanding embodied intelligence better. We then had a talk from Carlos, which was really nice because we pivoted more to the AI direction. What can we do with AI? What are the fundamental limits, and how can we use embodied intelligence to express or identify those? And he had a really nice talk about what are the limits of AI? How do we probe these? And are these limits a challenge? So we talked about some of the limits we see in terms of open-ended learning, limits of complexity, and he ended with this question of, can we and should we overcome these limits? So we can see there's these theoretical limits on these AI methods, but actually these formal limitations actually could be very beneficial, and perhaps this kind of embodied intelligence approach should be more focusing on embracing these limitations in terms of having limitations on precision or limitations on performance, and actually how we can leverage these to achieve complexity or kind of behavioral diversity. So should we break or should we accept fundamental limits? Then in terms of our other three speakers, Silvestro Moxera then really took it as how can we put the person at the center in terms of embodied intelligence, and that to do this, we have an intrinsic requirement for soft embodiment, and how we can combine the kind of human and robot together in one embodied system, and looking at the means of interacting between these. Yun Sinitaki talked about also novel platforms and what is the right kind of platform to explore embodiment, talking about his work on soft underwater robots, both the technology side, but also how they can serve as a platform for exploring embodied intelligence. And then finally, we had David Howard, and he had some really questions about when should we use embodied computation or embodied intelligence? What is the cost of implementing this? For example, do we need to do, in terms of design, a lot of exploration of different designs to find an optimal solution? And for what tasks is it a necessity, and what are the benefits? So he was putting this in the context perhaps of environmental niches and operating in challenging environments, and how and when we should leverage embodied intelligence or embodied computation. So what was really nice about this morning already is we had this really broad, this was a figure that Famir introduced in this morning, this really broad intersection of topics, but they all fundamentally grounded by the same thing. And how we can bring these discussions of neuroscience, computer science, robotics engineering together to both progress this understanding of biological systems and hopefully how we can build more bio-inspired machines. And this led to some really interesting discussions. We touched on the challenges in terms of energy and kind of cost and resources, the intelligence that stems from materials and how materials is the fundamental level on which intelligence is built, design, and also kind of platforms or systems that really showcase EI. So hopefully that has enticed you, if you've missed these talks, to go back and watch them online. It was a fantastic start to the first session, and we continue on from here. So this afternoon, we have a further 2 plenary talks and also short talk and panel discussion. And then we will finish the end of today's session with a final kind of wrap-up discussion to bring all of today's topics together. And then we will finish also with a final set of breakout rooms. So it is my pleasure to introduce our first plenary talk from Professor Silvia Vignolini. I apologize for the pronunciation. So thank you very much, Silvia, for joining us. So Silvia is a professor working at the interface of kind of chemistry, physics and biology from the University of Cambridge. And she's a professor of chemistry and biomaterials. So we're really glad to have you here to build on, especially some of the topics we had this morning, and to hear from you and about your work. So Silvia, if you'd like to share your screen. Fantastic, we can see that nicely. And I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much, Silvia. Thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to the next session. So I would like to introduce briefly our next group of talks. So we now have a session for the next 40 minutes or so, where we have a series of short talks. So the idea is these are quite dynamic, and we will have no questions, but then save our questions. We'll have the questions at the end in the form of a panel discussion. So it's my pleasure to introduce Matej Hoffman, who has been a friend of this conference for many years now, and is going to lead these afternoon and panels. And he's going to start by giving kind of a lead talk into this afternoon. So Matej, I will stop sharing and hand over to you. And thank you very much for joining us and taking on the leading of this session.